Why is Russian energy smoking? Trump's wife has been called a Ukrainian agent. And also, a prosecutor scandal over a very reckless interview. All this is on TSN today, but that's not all. Subscribe to our YouTube, watch the broadcast. I'm waiting for your comments. And while you're hitting like on this episode, here are a few more important topics for Tuesday. When silence is a real luxury.
As soon as something starts buzzing, we run away immediately.
The TSN crews saw firsthand what it's like to live under constant shelling in Frontline Zaporizhia, and even had to run from an enemy FPV drone themselves. Berlin will pay, Washington will deliver.
We can't provide another one of our systems, but we're ready to purchase 2 such systems.
How and when will the new Patriots arrive in Ukraine? What did the defense ministers of Germany and the United States agree on? Alexander Usyk and a Ukrainian mosaic in the center of London.
Russia destroyed a hospital. Russia destroyed a school. Russia destroyed lives.
How Trafalgar Square recreated the work of the legendary Allegorska, and what one of the most famous English billionaires was doing there. Denis Shmyhal is resigning. The Prime Minister of Ukraine wrote a resignation letter and published it on his Telegram channel. He thanked the defenders, both men and women, who are holding the front, the president and his team. This means that the entire government is resigning. Volodymyr Zelensky had previously announced changes in the cabinet of ministers. He considered Denis Shmyhal for the position of Minister of Defense of Ukraine and offered the post of Prime Minister to Yulia Sviridenko. Today, a meeting took place at Bankova between the head of state and Vice Prime Ministers Sviridenko and Fedorov, during which they set tasks for the government for the next 6 months. The possible appointment of the new cabinet may take place in the Verkhovna Rada on July 17. The Russians struck the city of Usyk in the Mykolaiv region with an air-launched missile. A 69-year-old man was injured. At noon, from a Su-57 aircraft over temporarily occupied Crimea, the enemy launched a Kh-59 missile. It exploded on the outskirts of the city, where a local resident was present. As a result of the explosion, dry grass caught fire over an area of 1 hectare. 2 people were injured in Heliopol, Zaporizhia region. Since evening, the enemy has also been attacking the regional center. Due to Shahid drone strikes, several fires broke out. A hangar and an infrastructure facility were destroyed. At dawn, in the suburbs of Kherson, the Russians attacked a civilian car with a drone. A man and a woman were injured. Another city resident was injured in a car due to a drone the day before. In total, over the past day, 2 people were killed and 17 others were wounded as a result of the occupiers' actions. 1 woman was killed and 9 more people were injured in the Kharkiv region. Drones attacked the region all night long. A woman was injured in the Kupiansk district. There were also strikes in Chuiv. In Donetsk region, 2 people were killed in Mirnograd and Kostyantynivka. Another 9 people were wounded as a result of shelling in 5 settlements of this region. Moments of silence here are a real luxury. Every day, the Russians shell Malokoteranivka in the Zaporizhia region. Aerial bombs, rocket projectiles, and FPV drones swarm through the air. The locals have already gotten used to the explosions and the buzzing of drones. They've learned to quickly hide in houses and basements, and at the same time try to live a normal life, going to the shops and tending to their gardens. Even the TSN film crew had to run from an FPV drone. Kira Oves has more details about life in this frontline village.
It's already considered normal here that FPV drones fly every day and strike populated areas, civilian objects, and civilian vehicles. People are suffering.
Russian metal hit near Mrs. Natalie S.'s house the day before. She and her husband were woken up by a powerful explosion around 5 in the morning. The woman says the drone hit near the tractor. The blast wave and shrapnel shattered the windows and the car nearby.
We jumped up and started running. I stepped on glass because my window was completely pierced through by shrapnel. We ran out here. In the shrapnel, it fell exploded, and the shrapnel flew at the car and the window. There were fragments lying all over here, and as soon as we hear that buzzing sound, we'd run right away.
But you don't always hear the buzzing of a Russian FPV drone overhead right away. That's exactly what happened when our film crew was documenting the aftermath of the shelling. As soon as the sound got closer, we and the police officer had only a few seconds to find shelter. Catching our breath and making sure there's no immediate threat to our lives, we move on. This is the kind of environment the community police officer has to work in every day. Mr. Sir, puts on his bulletproof vest before heading out. He always carries a helmet, a tourniquet, and a device that alerts him to the appearance of Russian drones on the horizon.
It intercepts the signal from an enemy drone and lets us know whether it's nearby or not. It even intercepts and displays video from an FPV drone.
Besides the small FPDs, more destructive Malnias also fly here. One of those hit the village elder's house last week.
All the windows were blown out, the doors too, and the doors are heavy wooden ones. They were just ripped off and thrown into other rooms. There was a big, heavy ladder we couldn't lift, even the two of us. I looked but couldn't find it. It had been thrown onto the shed roof.
In Malokateranivka, out of 3,000 people, less than half remain. Among them are 200 children. So far, a mandatory evacuation hasn't been announced in the village, but the situation is getting worse every day, says Ms. Lyamla.
We also survived a shelling with KABs where we lost an entire street where a woman was killed. We really wouldn't want to wait for more consequences like that. That's why we really hope that the regional military administration will, better assess the situation.
Because of the raids by Russian drones, rocket attacks, and guided bombs, the once lively and bustling streets of Malokateranivka are now deserted.
It's very obvious. You see, we're driving down the street, and there isn't a single person around.
Well, here are our neighbors. Seems like we're still here. Well, so far, no one has left yet. But if you go outside, to the store or wherever, there are practically no people on the street. Something comes flying in every day. If it's not here, then it's over there, or somewhere else entirely. It's scary, especially at night. It's really frightening when that thing flies by, buzzing right over the house, right over here. And you never know where it's going to land.
Despite all this, people still support each other. They plant gardens, take care of their animals, and help neighbors fix what's been destroyed by the attacks. And they're really waiting for the day when peace finally comes to their village. Here are Ovs, Andriy Kopaka, Zaporizhia, TSN 1+1.
The Russians will have fewer drones, at least for a while. Our cyber specialists from the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine have paralyzed the operations of one of the largest drone manufacturing enterprises in Russia. Ukrainian hackers attacked the network and broke into the servers of the company Gasker Integration, gaining access to more than 47 terabytes of technical information about the production of Russian drones and confidential employee profiles of the company. After downloading all the information, they destroyed it on the enemy side, including 10 terabytes of backup copies. As a result of the cyber attack, the company has no internet access, production and accounting software are down, and the development center's operations are paralyzed. All doors at the UAV manufacturing plant have been locked. Employees left the building through the emergency exits. The complete technical documentation for the production of Russian drones has been handed over to the relevant specialists of Ukraine's defense forces. The Oktyabrski court of Russia's Belgorod came under attack. 2 drones flew into the building where it is located. Apparently, the drone flew straight into the window. A fire broke out. In the video from Russian propagandists, you can see the damaged facade and shattered windows. They say a female employee was injured. Whose drone it was is unknown, but Russians complain that such an incident has already happened in Belgorod for the second time this summer. In June, a pair of drones had already flown into the same building. There were explosions and smoke in other regions of Russia as well. Residents of Voronezh, Rostov, and Lipetsk regions complained about a loud night. In total, the occupiers' Ministry of Defense counted 55 drones. As always, they claim to have shot them all down. but footage from social media shows black smoke rising in the city of Ilyets, near the Energia battery plant. At this facility, the enemy manufactures parts for drones and missiles that attack peaceful Ukrainian cities. So this is not the first time it has become a target. Russian terrorists have occupied Bahadar in the Donetsk region. The aggressor country's army has also managed to advance in other settlements of Donetsk region, near Razin, Novokatsk, in Tolst, Oleksivka, and in the Zaporizhia region near Malinivka. This was reported by deep state analysts. At the same time, the Ukrainian General Staff calculated that since the beginning of the day, there have been 110 combat clashes. Nearly 30 times, the enemy tried to storm in the Pokrovsk direction. The hottest spots there are, in particular, near Novoekonomik, Udakny, as well as Rodinsk and Dakny. As of 4 p.m., one fierce battle was still ongoing. Attacks are still ongoing right now on the Novopavlivka section in the area of Zaporizhia, Pidom, Shevchenkov, and Novosilky. The Russians are also not leaving our troops alone on the Lyman, northern Slobozansky, Kursk, and Kramatorsk directions. 6 assaults have also been recorded in the area of the Antonivsky Bridge and several nearby islands. However, Ukrainian defenders are inflicting significant losses on the Russians in manpower and are also destroying their equipment. Martial law and general mobilization will remain in effect in Ukraine at least until November 5th of this year. Parliament has already extended the terms for the 16th time by passing the relevant bills. The deputies also agreed to the creation of a special tribunal regarding Russia's crime of aggression against Ukraine. The ratification of the agreement launches the legal mechanism for the tribunal to begin its work, including determining its location and developing its regulations. Today, the Verkhovna Rada supported Ukraine's withdrawal from the Ottawa Convention on the Prohibition of Anti-Personnel Mines. Ukrainian defenders have found themselves in an unequal situation with the aggressor, who has been actively using such mines since 2014. Back in 2005, Ukraine committed itself to renounce the use, storage, and production of these mines, which significantly weakened its ability to deter the Russian advance, explains Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha.
Since 2022, more than 4,590 cases of Russia using various types of anti-personnel mines have been recorded on Ukrainian territory. 616 criminal cases have been opened regarding the deaths of 256 people and injuries to nearly 500 others, including children. We have found ourselves in an unjust situation that restricts our sovereign right to self-defense.
The 18th package of sanctions against Russia has still not been adopted. At a meeting in Brussels, EU foreign ministers were unable to reach an agreement on new restrictions. This was reported by Radio Liberty journalist Richard Jazwiak. 2 countries turned out to be opponents of the adoption. These are Slovakia and Malta. They want guarantees of compensation for possible damages in the event of a complete ban on the supply of Russian gas to the European Union. The Slovak Prime Minister was personally asked to lift the veto by his Czech counterpart, Petr Fiala. However, they rejected these appeals. They explained this as protecting national interests. In Malta, however, according to Politico, there are concerns that a price cap on the Kremlin's energy resources could negatively affect the country's tanker fleet. According to the new proposal, Brussels planned to lower the price of Russian oil from $60 to $45 per barrel, ban the operation of the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines, and impose restrictions on Russian banks and military technologies. It is preliminarily known that discussions on the sanctions package at the level of EU country ambassadors will continue tomorrow. The EU's chief diplomat, Kaja Kallas, had high hopes for a positive decision regarding its adoption, and also commented on Donald Trump's latest statements.
We truly welcome the news from the United States that they will provide Ukraine with weapons so it can defend itself. Of course, we also hope to reach a political agreement on the 18th sanctions package. We are very, very close. I hope it happens today. We are working on the oil price cap. This issue is still alive, so hopefully we will reach an agreement. As I have already said, even if the Americans do not support it, but other G7 countries do, we will still move forward.
Patriots for Ukraine. Germany will lead the process of transferring air defense systems to our country. Chancellor Friedrich Merz discussed this with the American president. Germany is ready to pay for the systems. Now Berlin and Washington are negotiating the supply of American air defense systems. This was stated in Washington by Defense Minister Boris Pistorius. Before this, Donald Trump announced for the first time his readiness to sell weapons to Ukraine and threatened Russia and its allies with tariffs if Putin does not end the war within 50 days. Natalia Freibrick from Berlin found out when to expect the American Patriots.
The idea to buy and transfer Patriot batteries for Ukraine was discussed by German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius with his American counterpart Pete Hegseth over the phone a few weeks ago. A political agreement could be signed within a matter of days, but the actual deployment in Ukraine will take a few more months. The German minister stated this after a meeting in Washington.
I spoke with Pete Hegseth about this a few weeks ago over the phone, and during our conversation, I suggested that Germany purchase 2 Patriot systems from the Americans and transfer them directly to Ukraine. Simply considering the situation with the supply and maintenance of the Patriot systems, we cannot transfer another one of our own systems, but we are ready to purchase 2 such systems given the necessity that none of us can ignore, that Ukraine needs more systems.
The financing model is simple. The U.S. provides the equipment. Europeans pay the bill. Pistorius publicly called on the rest of the NATO members to open their wallets. At the same time, Berlin asked the Pentagon to sell Typhoon launchers, which are capable of launching cruise ballistic missiles up to 2,000 kilometers. There is no formal agreement yet, but Hegseth called the request interesting and promised to consider it. Trump also considered supplying Ukraine with Tomahawk cruise missiles, which are capable of reaching Moscow and St. Petersburg. But for now, they have been excluded from the supply list. Federal Chancellor Friedrich Merz called Trump's decision an important initiative and assured that Germany will play a key financial role. According to the Chancellor, this will help stop the Russian bombing terror and strengthen the security of Europe itself. While Pistorius was at the Pentagon, in the Oval Office, U.S. President Donald Trump made a sharp turn from his usual rhetoric. In the presence of NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, he announced his readiness to sell weapons to Ukraine and issued an ultimatum to the Kremlin. If Russian aggression does not stop within 50 days, the U.S. will impose 100% secondary tariffs against Russia's trading partners because talks with the Kremlin dictator mean nothing. And even his wife is now telling the American president about this.
I talked to him a lot to get this done, and I always hang up and say, well, that was a pleasant call. And then missiles fly toward Kyiv or another city. And I say, strange. And when this happens 3 or 4 times, you start to think that these conversations mean nothing. My conversations with him are always very pleasant. They seem very nice. And then that night, missiles are launched. I go home and tell the First Lady that I spoke with Volodymyr today. We had a great conversation, and she says, really? And another city has just been shelled.
Volodymyr Zelensky has already thanked the United States and called the decision critically important for saving lives. Last night, the president of Ukraine had a phone conversation with both Donald Trump and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte.
I am grateful to President Trump for his willingness to support us in NATO.
The protection of our people's lives.
Ukraine may receive the first Patriot batteries in a few months. The U.S. is ready to provide the equipment, while Europe will pay the bill. Reporting from Berlin, Natalia Freibrick, TSN 1+1.
An unexpected ally of Ukraine in the White House. Western media and social networks exploded with headlines about the support for Ukraine from the First Lady of the United States after yesterday's story from Donald Trump. The Times published a headline. Did Melania become the reason why Trump turned his back on Putin? Journalists write that despite her formal status as First Lady, she remains one of the most influential voices in the U.S. president's inner circle regarding the war in Ukraine. And even at the very beginning of the full-scale invasion, She publicly condemned the war and now reminds her husband about the scale of destruction and the casualties in Ukraine. Even despite the ongoing negotiations with the Kremlin, the media also draws attention to Melania's background. She was born in Slovenia, so she may have a deeper understanding of the threat posed by Moscow's aggressive policies. Meanwhile, Ukrainian social media users have jokingly started calling the First Lady of the US a Ukrainian agent, Trumpenko, who works for Kiev's interests in the White House. In posts, Melania is depicted wearing a traditional embroidered shirt with a trident emblem. There are also posts where Trump's wife is awarded an army cap with the Ukrainian flag. After Trump's statements, the Scandinavian countries also put forward an initiative to fund weapons for our country. Denmark's Foreign Minister Lars Rasmussen stated that they are ready to invest in the purchase of Patriot systems. The diplomat noted that the details are still being worked out, but already emphasized Washington's willingness to sell these weapons. Meanwhile, the Swedish Prime Minister, responding to yesterday's statements by Trump, promised that his country will continue to contribute to the rapid and substantial delivery of weapons to Ukraine. The official welcomed Washington's new policy on supplying more advanced weapons to Ukraine and increasing economic pressure on Russia, noting that the sooner the Allies unite to force the Kremlin to end the war, the more lives will be saved. The International Swimming Federation has allowed Russians to participate in relay competitions, but only under neutral status. However, the main topic of discussion at the World Aquatics Championships, which is taking place in Singapore from July 11th to August 3rd, has been the symbolism, specifically the flags of the aggressor country, which are still used to mark supposedly neutral Russian athletes in the official competition documents. The International Swimming Federation took this step despite the fact that it contradicts the recommendations of the International Olympic Committee. At the same time, neutral Russian athletes are expressing outrage on social media that they have been banned from posting any photos or results from these competitions on their personal accounts. And the Federation does not allow Russian symbols to be displayed on neutral uniforms. A wave of water flooded the New York subway. There were heavy rains there. The flood was so strong that it swept onto the city subway platform. The disaster caught passengers right inside the train cars. People had to climb onto the seats to keep their feet dry, or, on the contrary, wade through water up to their knees. Fortunately, none of the locals were injured, and there were no serious delays in public transport. The well-known Manhattan and Bronx districts were also flooded. Within a few hours, 15 centimeters of precipitation fell there, and the torrential rains also reached the state of New Jersey. Because of this, a state of emergency was even declared there. A locust invasion in Zaporizhia. A whole swarm of dangerous insects was spotted in the villages of Kushuham and Malokateranivka. Locusts feed on various crops, including grains, sunflowers, and vegetables. Farmers know that a mass outbreak can cause significant damage to the harvest. To stop and prevent the spread of the insects, specialists are working in the Kushuham community and are urging farmers not to delay in treating their agricultural fields, and to immediately use locust control products if swarms are detected. Ukrainian boxer Alexander Usyk presented the recreated mosaic Borovitor by Alla Horska. He did this in London. The panel by the 6th-year artist was displayed at Trafalgar Square. So, London became the first European capital where the mosaic by the Ukrainian artist appeared as part of the tour, and it was recreated down to the smallest detail. The piece was exhibited on the eve of Usyk's fight with Daniel Dubois. The project was also supported by English entrepreneur Sir Richard Branson. He unveiled the mosaic together with our champion, and during the event itself, charitable donations were collected to restore homes for 64 Ukrainian families who lost their housing due to Russian bombings. The original mural Borovitor was created by a group of monumental artists under the direction of Alla Horska in Mariupol in 1967. However, in July 2022, it was severely damaged by Russian occupiers. What has happened to the original now is unknown.
Russia destroyed my city, my country. Russia destroyed the hospital. Russia destroyed the school. Russia destroyed lives, the lives of Ukrainians. But we will survive. We will rebuild our country like a mosaic, piece by piece.
This truly is a symbol of Ukraine's endurance and resilience after 3 years of war. I never tire of repeating, the brave people of Ukraine are defending much more than just their own sovereignty and national identity. Whether on the front lines or in cities suffering from relentless Russian missile and drone attacks, Ukrainians are sacrificing their limbs and their lives to defend democracy and freedom for all of us.
Will you be watching Alexander Usyk's fight? What do you think of our champion? And who do you consider the greatest boxer in Ukrainian history? Him, or still one of the Klitschko brothers? Write what you think in the comments to this TSN episode, which I am now wrapping up. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the bell so you know when we release something new. Well, here's a brief summary of Tuesday, July 15th. Denis Shmyhal has submitted his resignation as Prime Minister of Ukraine to the Verkhovna Rada. Earlier, President Zelensky proposed that First Deputy Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko head the cabinet, and at the same time said that Shmyhal's experience would be useful in the position of Ukraine's Minister of Defense. Explosions occurred in the Voronezh, Rostov, Belgorod, and Lipetsk regions of Russia. The occupiers' Ministry of Defense counted 55 drones. Footage from social media shows black smoke rising in the city of Ilyets near the Energia battery plant, while in Belgorod, 2 drones hit the building of the Oktyabrski port. Germany will lead the process of transferring new Patriot systems to Ukraine. Chancellor Friedrich Merz discussed this with American President Donald Trump. Germany is ready to pay for the installations. Now Berlin and Washington are negotiating the details of the delivery. An unexpected ally of Ukraine in the White House. Western media and social networks exploded with headlines about support for Ukraine from the First Lady of the United States. Back at the start of the full-scale war, she publicly condemned the invasion, and now she reminds her husband about the scale of destruction and casualties in Ukraine. Ukrainian wits on social media have already started jokingly calling the First Lady of the United States the Ukrainian agent Trumpenko.
I go home and tell the First Lady that today I spoke with Volodymyr. We had a great conversation. And she says, "Really?" And another city was just shelled.
Martial law and general mobilization will remain in effect in Ukraine at least until November 5th of this year. Parliament has extended the terms for the 16th time by passing the relevant bills. The deputies also agreed to establish a special tribunal on Russia's crime of aggression and supported Ukraine's withdrawal from the Ottawa Convention banning anti-personnel mines.
We have found ourselves in an unfair situation that limits our sovereign right to self-defense.
In the Dnipropetrovsk region, officials who profited from shelters were detained, including a female official from the Samary City Council. During the reconstruction of 4 shelters, she and her accomplice managed to pocket about 7 million hryvnias. Now the suspects could face up to 12 years in prison. In Odessa, police detained a man who stole 2 icons, each 120 years old. The thief even managed to sell one of them at the market. The cops caught the thief, and through him, they also tracked down the buyer. The price for each stolen icon can start at $5,000. Ukrainian boxer Alexander Usyk presented a recreated mosaic called Allegorical Kestrel in London. The work was unveiled on the eve of Usyk's fight with Daniel Dubois. The project was supported by English billionaire Richard Branson. The original Kestrel panel was created in Mariupol in 1967. What has happened to the original now is unknown.
But we will survive. We will rebuild our country like a mosaic, piece by piece.